Today, I'm coming to you from Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland, and I'm going to show you exactly how by 27 years old, I became financially free and how you can do it as well. No, this isn't some lame get-rich-quick scheme. I'm going to teach you how every single American, without trying to save $5 here or there on a latte, could end up becoming financially free and building a massive amount of wealth through owning income real estate. And no, I'm not talking about those radio ads either where they say you can get rich using other people's money. No, we're gonna teach you the real way to build wealth. Let's get started. I remember when I was 16 years old, I sold my World of Warcraft account for $1,990. That's almost $2,000. And the very first thing I did with that money, I bought a Sony TV so I could play Xbox in HD. And look, buying stuff is fun. The nice thing about the path that I took is I get to keep buying stuff and build wealth at the same time. What did we buy yesterday from the Toy Story store?
It's like a toy claw machine.
A toy claw machine?
Yeah.
Now you might be wondering, how is that possible? How could you keep spending money and build wealth at the same time? That seems counterintuitive. After all, our culture says, well, if you want to build wealth, you gotta save money, put money into index funds, and just be patient. The earlier you start, the better. We've heard all of this advice before, but to me, I found there's an easier way.
Don't walk out!
Oh, there's a loop! Now, some of you might already know what this investing strategy is, but for those of you that don't, let's come up with a very simple example. Let's say somebody said to you, hey, how about I give you $20 million worth of real estate, but you have to have $20 million of debt given to you as well. You might be thinking to yourself, well, that means you weren't really given anything, right? You were given $20 million of properties and $20 million of debt. That's zero net worth, right? 20 assets, 20 in liabilities, zero net worth. The first thing you might be thinking is, oh my gosh, $20 million in debt sounds terrible. I prefer to be debt-free. Well, think about this for a moment. Ignore cash flow, vacancy, repairs, tenancy, all this other complicated stuff. Just get that out of your mind for a moment. Just think solely about $20 million in debt for a moment. If somebody else paid that $20 million of debt off for you, AKA tenants, but we'll get to that part, every single month your net worth would go up $35,000 doing nothing. That's called principal paydown, because every single month when you make a payment on a single family house, a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex, you're paying off what's known as principal, or you're paying the bank money back, so that eventually you don't owe that debt anymore. Now, this isn't to be confused with like credit card debt, where oftentimes you can never get out of debt. This is real estate debt, but there's a lot more power to this. So let's talk about the other powers. So now we know just by paying off this debt and nothing else, no cash flow, nothing else, your net worth is going up $35,000 per month. I know this might sound a little far-fetched, $20 million of real estate, but the principles are very powerful. Roll with them for a moment. So every single month, you're building this net worth because somebody else is paying off your debt for you. What's the other thing that happens? Well, let's take $20 million for a moment and say, okay, if this $20 million in real estate went up in value or appreciated just 1% per year, what does that mean to you? $200,000 per year doing nothing.
Carry on.
Oh!
We don't want any trouble. We will be watching.
He's watching us, Jack.
Don't shoot us.
Now, rightfully so, you might be thinking, oh, but there's inflation that sort of erodes the value of your money. Well, real estate is probably one of the strongest protections against inflation. See, as inflation happens, the value of real estate goes up. In fact, it usually goes up a good amount more than inflation. So if inflation is 1.8%, maybe real estate will go up 3 or 4%. You pocket the difference. And those are long-run averages, too. So we're not speculating and saying, oh yeah, values are gonna go up 10, 20%. Also, the more inflation happens, the less your $20 million of debt is worth. See, as inflation happens, rent goes up. That is, the people paying off your loans actually end up paying you more every single year than they did the year before that. But the debt you're paying off stays the same because you always want to take out what are known as 30-year fixed rate loans. That way your payment never changes, kind of like the shenanigans that happened in the 2008 recession. We don't want that. So what then is the easiest way to go from no starship to a home to a big starship? Well, in my opinion, the best way to do that is take advantage of a very, very simple concept. Think about this. Have you ever heard of people who flip real estate? They buy a house for one price, and then they try to do some improvements to it, and then they flip it for more money. A lot of people make money doing that. They could make a good living flipping real estate. That's why there are so many programs teaching people how to flip real estate. The problem is with flipping real estate, you constantly need to find good properties to buy. And that's a little frustrating because you buy a good property, you sell it, and then you gotta buy another one. Is there a better way, though, to build wealth beyond sitting around and constantly trying to flip properties or wholesale real estate? Is there a better way than trying to save money and put money aside in an index fund? Well, in my opinion, the answer is yes. Here's why. When I was 19 years old, I bought a house for $305,000. I was competing against flippers. But I decided, you know what, I want to get into home ownership. So I'm going to beat the flippers. I'm just going to pay a little bit more than the flippers. When I bought that $305,000 house, the house needed about $50,000 worth of work, and the house was worth $450,000 by the time I was done with it. That means at 19 years old, I went from a net worth of $9,000, that was my down payment on this property, to owning a property that I only owed $350,000 on, purchase price, fix up, and that was now worth $450,000. Now, I could have easily flipped it, but I decided, you know what, I'm gonna hold on to it instead. Rather than buying and selling real estate, I'm gonna take advantage of something simple. And this is exactly what everybody can do. Step number one, save just enough money to get a down payment. Somewhere around 5 to 10% down is fine. Don't worry about mortgage insurance or all that crap. Just pay it. Get pre-approved. The second thing you should do is, rather than wait around for 20 or 25% down, you should focus on finding properties that need a little bit of cosmetic repair. You know, the basics like paint, carpet, flooring, maybe update the kitchen and bathrooms a little bit. Nothing crazy, nothing that you couldn't do yourself. In fact, that property that I bought when I was 19 years old, my goal was to do everything myself to save even more money. But if you don't have the time to do that, you can hire somebody else to do it as well. Now, a common thing people ask is, well, wait a minute, how am I supposed to find a good deal? Aren't other agents or investors just going to buy all the good deals? No, because your goal isn't to sell your real estate or flip it like most people do. Your goal is to keep this real estate forever. The beautiful thing about that is you're able to pay more than what the flippers are paying or the investors are paying. In other words, I don't care what market you're in, whether you're in New York City, you're in Brooklyn, you're in Idaho, you're in California, you're in Florida, you're in the UK, it doesn't matter. If there are people flipping real estate in your city, which I guarantee you there are people flipping real estate any city you're in, you can buy below market value deals by paying a little bit more money than the flippers, controlling real estate. And guess what? If you just did this once every 2 to 4 years, you'd get your $20 million in real estate. In fact, you'd end up having more than $20 million in real estate. Now, obviously, to get to the point where these properties are worth over $20 million, it's going to take a little bit of time. But the beautiful thing about owning real estate is it doesn't require you to cut all of the other expenses out of your life. It doesn't require you to try to save every single penny. Instead, your goal is find a property to buy, find something to move into, find something to live in for a little bit. Then 2 or 3 years later, move. There's a lot of conventional talk that says you shouldn't own real estate until you're ready to settle down and have a family. But if you focus on buying below market value deals that need a little bit of work, deals that when you rent them out cover your payment, then you're doing what's known as buying wedge deals. And buying wedge deals is the core of my real estate investing course, linked below, which you can get 22% off on until September 10th of this year. That's my dad's birthday. And so this way, when you want to go to the marketplace and you want to buy stuff, you can buy whatever you want. As long as you have a job and you can qualify for real estate, your only goal is buy a place every 2 to 4, maybe 5 years that need some work, fix it up, keep the thing forever. If you're going to live in it for a year or two, perfect. Then you become an expert in that house. You get to do a little bit of work on the house if you want to while you're there, and then move and do it again. Keep all of your real estate forever. In fact, take a look at this screenshot from John W.'s thank you post in our real estate investing course today, where he fired his realtor to delist his house for sale, decided to keep it as a rental, had 10 plus applicants in 4 days, and now has a tenant paying more in rent than the mortgage payment would have been for the buyer, which means cash flow for John, principal pay down for John, appreciation, tax write-offs, and you name it. And he saved $30,000 in selling costs. And now that example that I told you early on, where that appreciation builds your net worth, where that principal pay down lowers your debt and builds your net worth, happens automatically. See, to me, that actually makes real estate one of the easiest forms of passive income. Because every single month, when you collect rent from your tenants, or your property manager collects the rent for you, and then you pay off your loan, guess what's really happening? Your tenant is paying off your loan for you every month. Obviously, you want a buffer in there for repairs and as things come up. I have a rule of thumb. I say, hey, you know what? Put $200 aside for every single tenant you have every single month, up until you have around $7,500 to maybe $10,000 per unit, just in case something comes up.
Evan, sir?
Yeah, what's up, man?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, totally. Pleasure. Oh, that's awesome, man. Here. They know me. That's awesome. Now, there are two other things worth mentioning. Number one, a lot of people say, oh, you know what? I should have a side hustle to build some extra income so that way I can invest more. And I'll just invest my side hustle income. And I look at that actually as a mistake. In my opinion, if let's say you're making as a couple $100,000, $120,000, and then you look, well, I'll have a side hustle. I'll go drive Uber, or I'll go do some small. Maybe you make an extra 20 grand or whatever and invest that. In my opinion, that's not going to get you far. In my opinion, if instead you took that time that you were dedicating to driving an Uber or side hustling and dedicated it to learning how to invest in real estate and finding deals and investing, remember, you only need a deal every year, 2, 3, 4 years. It's not like you constantly need a stream of deals. Just keep an eye out, educate yourself, know what to look for. That will end up being much more profitable than any kind of side hustle where you're making 20 bucks an hour or whatever, and then investing that money. The second mistake, in my opinion, is constantly worrying about a recession. Look, the bottom line is, if you end up getting to the place where you have millions of dollars worth of real estate, it doesn't matter if property values fluctuate down or fluctuate up again. If you constantly buy deals below market value, first of all, you insulate yourself from loss. You're not paying market price for something very expensive and then worried about a fall because somehow you might have to sell. You're not planning on selling, so you're never really going to capitalize on this whole I gotta sell it thing anyway. Just rent it out, have your payment covered, and be a long-term investor. So now here's another good one that I hear regularly. Oh, well, it's too expensive in my area. Guarantee in any area that you're looking to invest in real estate, you can not only find below market value deals, but you can make it work. Even if that means you get a 3-bedroom house and you rent out 2 of the rooms to where your payment is less than what you're paying in rent now. Or you house hack by buying a 2, 3, or 4 unit building, also with 3.5% to 5% down, rent out the other units, and have the fact that you now have tenants help you make the payment. Now, I would say 9 out of 10 times, you're going to end up getting the best below market value deals on single family real estate. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't also keep an eye on looking for potential multifamily deals. Now look, none of what I'm saying says you shouldn't still be somewhat frugal, but honestly, I get a little bit frustrated when I hear people say, oh, you know what, I'm gonna get the cheapest possible hotel, I'm gonna get the cheapest possible everything through life. It's important to also enjoy life as you go through it, but constantly trying to save every little dime isn't, in my opinion, the best way to build wealth. Because it leads to a frustrating life and it associates sort of this pain with investing. But it shouldn't. Building wealth shouldn't be painful. It should be fun. Oh, Maharan. Whoa.
You have just built a lightsaber. And like a Jedi is sitting for you, you two have the power to change the galaxy.
And that's one of the things I've learned to love about real estate. See, think about it this way. If I had put my money into an S&P index fund, that is my initial $9,000 for that down payment on that $305,000 house. Had I put that money into an index fund, and let's say I quadrupled my money, I would have had $36,000. But instead, because I got a loan, on a property that I knew I was getting for less than market value because it needed some cosmetic work. A property that I was paying just a little bit more than the flippers were paying for. I knew I was safe because I could always turn around and rent this thing out for a cash flow because I was getting it below market value. But instead of that index fund, I turned that $9,000 into controlling a $305,000 property that was quickly worth $450,000 because I had to put some work into it. That's how flippers make money after all. So you know the opportunity exists if flippers are in your area. Now, that property is worth $600,000, which means even if I sold that property today and paid all the selling costs to sell it and paid off my debt, I'd probably walk away with somewhere around $225,000. Because I lived in the property for 2 out of the last 5 years, that $225,000 would be tax-free. Thanks, America. So now in 8 years, instead of turning $9,000 into maybe $36,000 in an index fund, I turned $9,000 into $225,000 tax-free. Now check with the CPA, but there are also ways to make this tax-free if I kept the property forever. But to me, I've sort of gamified real estate. If I find just one good deal every couple years, I know that I continue to bump my net worth and I continue to bump my cash flow every single time. The beautiful thing is every single person watching this video can do exactly this. There's nothing stopping anybody from buying a single family, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, then doing it again, then doing it again. The problem is mainstream media says, you know what, if you move, you should sell property. If you are younger, you don't want to be tied down by a 30-year mortgage. All this stuff is a bunch of nonsense. And it's nonsense that's usually generated by industries that are either trying to sell your property or trying to get you to invest in their fund. Now, just for a bit more perspective, just this year, because I do real estate investing full time, I bought 3 properties that matched what I described to you in this video. And there should really be no objection. In fact, I hold real estate events in person. I just did one in New York City, Chicago, Seattle. I have another one coming up in Austin, Texas, San Francisco, Miami. You're welcome to come to those, but really what I want you to know is every single objection that anybody brings to one of these events, I have solved before. The reason I say I've solved the objections before is because I don't just talk the talk. I have helped take people as a real estate broker from no net worth to owning multiple rental properties and building net worth fast by buying these below market wedge deals. Having done it gives me the experience to know it's possible for everybody, no matter whether you're starting with 0% down as a VA or you're getting down payment assistance to get into your first 3% conventional loan with no money out of pocket, or you've got 10 or 20% down. You know, I think one of the biggest wealth mistakes people make is they focus on the smaller dollar. They focus on that $1,000 raise. They focus on putting $50 into index funds every month. They focus on saving money on a latte or not being able to treat themselves to, you know, a lightsaber or even a trip to Disney or a toy for their kids or whatever. I mean, even some of the smaller dollar stuff, if you play with it for a bit and you donate it, look, I'm not saying be frivolous, but you gotta live life too, right? And so that's why I'm so excited about real estate, because real estate gives you that opportunity to do what I call focus on the larger dollar. Focus where you can make the most money. Put as much attention and learning into that as you can. Stop learning about 5 ways to save your way to $1 million. Learn about one way to make yourself a massive amount of money faster. And I mean, just to reiterate, if you're asking yourself, well, I don't know if I can find below market real estate. I don't know if I can buy real estate in my area. It's too expensive, or there's too much competition, or it's too this. If flippers are doing it, I guarantee you, you can make it happen as well, because you don't have selling costs. That's gonna go into your net worth, and we'll show you ways to never pay taxes on that. Now, there's one more objection people give for not buying real estate, and that's being uncertain how to renovate or how to get those deals on paint and carpet, how to do the right thing to make sure you're not over-improving and overspending. Because after all, that's a common problem, is people overspend on a real estate, which ends up costing them more money, and that's why we sometimes refer to home ownership as home brokership, because people just end up getting broke, spending money on crap they don't need. Well, the nice thing about real estate is there are professionals that help you for free when you're a buyer. Now, some could argue it's built into the economic value of real estate, but the bottom line is when you're a buyer, most real estate agents are actually paid by the seller. And the loan fees are oftentimes built into the loan, and there are ways to buy a house with no closing costs by taking what are known as negative discount points. So the idea that there's too much competition and that you're not going to have any help is not one that should stop you, because they're both solvable. So the next thing people oftentimes want to know is, how do you graduate? How do you get from doing small deals, the single family, the duplex, the triplex, the fourplex? How do you go from that to doing big deals, whether they're hotels or commercial or multifamily real estate? How do you get to that level? Well, the way you do that is just like this. First, you start with a small deal by helping you get around, going 5%, 10%, 20% down on your deals. You build a net worth. That might take you 5, 10, 20 years, depends a little bit on market timing too. There's no rush though. Once you build a net worth that you're comfortable with, you have a couple options. One, you can start paying down like crazy. This is why initially I recommend the 30-year fixed rate loan. Don't pay anything down yet while you're in that growth phase. Then you could sit pretty and just milk the assets you have, or you could take the assets you have and use them as collateral to help you buy big deals. Think about it this way. Have you ever looked into like a 32-unit apartment deal to consider buying something like that? And then you see, well, wait a minute, dang it, this 32-unit deal, this is like $5 million. That means in order to buy this, I need $2 million as a down payment. On commercial, you usually need somewhere between 35 to 50% as a down payment. Where are you gonna get that money? That's why you start with a small deal, then you go big. And that's exactly what I've done. And that's the story of how I became a millionaire through real estate. And eventually we'll get to the $1 billion mark. Keep watching and I'll show you, promise. Think about it this way for a moment. Once you're ready to leave that magical place of YouTube University, maybe it's time to pick up the phone and get in touch with a local real estate agent to help you make it happen. Get in touch with a local lender to help you make it happen. I'm not asking for your business. Yeah, I have a real estate investing course, but you can take information from this video. Obviously, there's a ton more in the course, but think to yourself, once you pick up the phone and make that first purchase in real estate, you'll get what's known as the real estate bug. And then if you keep in mind this very quote, you'll have no trouble getting to that $20 million in real estate. And this is the quote I use to keep the blinders on. Don't wait to buy real estate and wait, and then never sell real estate.
Don't wait to buy real estate plots.